And thank you very much, Economist, for organizing this. And thank you again, third time, for inviting me to be here. As you mentioned, former president and former prime minister of Armenia, but I'm fully retired, so I don't represent my government here. I'm speaking as an individual, as a person. In some sense, probably I have to remember that I'm also a former professor of mathematics and theoretical physics. You'll feel that in a couple of minutes. As a former president and prime minister, probably you would expect me to talk about another huge disaster and tragedy which is happening now in Caucasus, in my own country, in Armenia. Basically, these are terrible several years. I mean, for me as an intellectual, the last 3 years that started with the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan in 2020, and then 2022, the war that started in Ukraine, and now what's happening in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas. Terrible, tragic. I'm sure that all of you know that there are more than 100,000 refugees from Karabakh that left their homeland, that they were living for thousands of years. They are now refugees in proper Armenia, in the Republic of Armenia. I'm sure that you know that there are thousands of deaths, lives were lost, and probably you don't know that unfortunately during the war of 2020, when between Armenia and Azerbaijan, of 44-day war, and even when Armenians in Karabakh were forced to leave the country, there was not huge, basically, impact or support from international community, and it was not very much discussed worldwide as it is now. But that probably is a lesson, that even if the conflicts are small, we have to pay attention. And because otherwise, the next one will come, and the next one will be bigger, more painful for everybody. Now, if you allow me in a couple of minutes to go back to the title of this conference, the Economist has organized this it's called The Great Transition, Geopolitics, Environment, Technology. And I would like to make a small contribution here or there. Everybody speaks about problems, change that are happening in the world, okay? And the former Prime Minister of Northern Macedonia ended his speech saying a word which is very important. We are in a times of uncertainty, okay? Before trying to resolve the issues, before trying to understand how we can resolve them, we have to identify the big problem. What is that has changed? And well, in 3 minutes' time, it will not be possible for me to tell that. I'm speaking about this for several years at Davos, at Munich Security Conference, that we are living on a crossroads of a complete change. The famous American scientist that is supposed to speak here on the 30th was predicting the end of the history 30 years ago, but in fact, it's a start of the beginning of a new era. And in order to make it more dramatic, I will call it, we are entering a new quantum world. And I'll explain to you what does that mean. and that's a subject of my book, which is coming up next year. The quantum world means that it's not the classical one. I think the rules and the way we handle our policies, our decisions are not going to be the same. And this is exactly the same 120 years ago when great scientists has discovered that the world of small particles is definitely, dramatically different than the one classical that Isaac Newton has described. There was panic, they didn't know what to do. And then later they understood in order to describe all of that, you have to change your logic, the way you approach and understand these elementary particles. It was not easy. Even a great Albert Einstein had difficulties of understanding quantum mechanics. The reality is, now we are living in a different world, and it's also thanks to quantum technology, because the quantum physics has created the technologies that you are using there, the technologies that each of you has, which is a mobile phone, the technology that has created dual representation of each of us. Each of us today is 50% real, 50% virtual. And that's true. Because think about how many hours are you spending on your telephone, computer, in front of a television. Think about the world that you are living, which is a virtual one, the Facebooks, of the Instagrams, and all of that, exchange of ideas, and so on and so forth. The world has changed, and I can give a big lecture about that. But the world has changed. It doesn't mean that the world has changed. It has changed also the fabric of our societies. I mean, look at this. The way, I will take only one example, democracy. How we were, because we all like speaking about democracy, how we were exercising in democratic states democracy. Going to ballot every 5 years, and then maybe if you are lucky, 5 times meeting in your constituency, your MP, and that's it. Today, every individual is exercising the ballot 5, 10 times a day on a Facebook. So the thing, how a democracy is exercised has changed. It has created post-truth, false truth, and many other things. So we have to accept that we are living in a completely different world, and the parameters of this world is and is going to be uncertainty, unpredictability, and so on. So in order to describe the world, we have to describe a new formula or a law that Heisenberg has created, the principle of uncertainty for the social behavior. That's the most fascinating analytical thing one has to. The second thing that I would like to share with you is the importance of small states. In December, my book is coming up on the Club of Small States. In 2 words, small states are important. There are small states that are very, very successful. Take Europe. Look at Estonia, Denmark, Ireland, Switzerland, and so on and so forth. In many cases, in many parameters, having the better digitalization, the better organization, more optimized government, and so on, they're ahead of the big states. So the small states matter. And the book was about exercising, thinking about what are the ingredients of a successful small state. And I'm so sad that one of the states, one of the chapters of my book is about Israel. It's about Singapore, it's about Estonia, it's about Qatar, it's about the United Arab Emirates, but it's also about Israel. And I learned a lot, not only by visiting, but also reading about Israel, about the success story, because as the president, prime minister, I am interested why Armenia, that had a lot of ingredients, was not so successful as the other ones. So, I'm so sorry that a country that is also represented where I was basically analyzing the success story of Israel is facing very, very tragic times. And I am all creating dialogue between small states, and the book is called The Small States Club. And with an aim that these small states that have huge impact on global geopolitics and economy, hopefully one day can come together and create something which will be called S20, the Club of the Small States, that will represent them at G20, G7, and worldwide. And take this as a small contribution to your title, Geopolitics, Environment, and Technology. Thank you very much.